Hello, everybody, and I would like to welcome you to this panel discussion, which is called Promoting Empathy and Humanism in Children. You know, it is a very important topic because when we talk about educating our children, we emphasize how important it is to study school subjects, to learn languages, but we do not talk at all about fostering empathy in children so that children become good adults that are responsible, empathic, and sympathetic. We think that maybe we can solve this issue, but it is not right like this. So we will start this discussion with Mrs. Goldberg. Good morning. On behalf of the Women's League of the Russian Jewish Congress, we would like to welcome you to this roundtable discussion promoting empathy and humanism in children. And I would like to thank our moderator, Anna Mongait. I also would like to thank our information partners, the Good House magazine and the Mail Journal. We really value your support. The Women's League of the Russian Jewish Congress supports charity projects, especially charity projects that work on preventing social and moral issues in the society. So the issue, what world will our children inherit, is becoming more and more topical every day. I will not talk a lot. We have a lot of experts who can give us a better overview of this issue. But I would like to underline how important this topic is. And we have gathered to discuss it for the first time. And Anna was right by saying we understand the importance of academic education of our children, of their future career success. But bringing children up, development of EQ, development of kindness and empathy is also extremely important. Any child is born with a need to be loved. And in this sense of the word, we remain children throughout our entire life. Of course, children are the future, but it has become a bit of a truism. We hear this phrase from politicians. We see this phrase all over mass media. Of course, we all used to be children, and then we grew up. Now we are adults. We have children of our own. And for each and every one of you, our kids are the embodiment of our childhood wishes and hopes. Any parent wants to bring up a child who is more successful than themselves. But we shouldn't forget that children are not just the future, but also are our present. So today we will not only talk about the kids, we will also talk about the parents. So promoting empathy and humanism is a very large-scale task, but it only means that we need to touch upon this subject as frequently as we can, especially at events like this one. The research shows us that family in itself is not a sufficient resource to bring up kind and empathic children. The society here plays a very vital role. So our experts today will talk on these issues. So today we can discuss how to promote empathy and humanism in children. And with this, I would like to give the floor to Anna Mongait, who is our moderator. Thank you very much, Esther. So we usually talk that the society has become cruel, it's really polarized, that we don't understand each other, and we always lament that people who used to be close to us, well, we cannot find a common language anymore. But we know that we need to promote humanism and empathy in our children. I would like to give the floor to Alexander Kolmanovsky, who is a psychologist, and he will talk about using tolerance to fight intolerance. It's very intriguing. So over to you, Alexander. Hello, everybody. Good morning.
Недостатки нетерпимости и ксенофобии,
Of course,
агрессии
when it
очевидны,
comes
их можно не
to
расписывать,
intolerance, xenophobia, and
мешая
aggression,
социальным
we
связям,
all
мешая
know
сотрудничеству, травматичным личностных
how
отношениях.
bad they are
Но в
because they can
нетерпимости
create
таится
trauma in
еще одна угроза,
interpersonal relations.
незаметная
But
нашему с вами
intolerance
обывательскому
also
взгляду,
has
но
another threat that
очевидная
might
для
not be so
профессионально-психологического.
obvious
Я
to
хотел бы этим видением с вами
a regular
поделиться.
person, but
И
this
эту
is
угрозу в
very
чрезвычайной
glaring for a
заразности,
professional. And
очень большой
intolerance is
инфекционности
extremely
нетерпимости.
infectious. It is
Как только
extremely
человек любого
contagious.
возраста, особенно
As soon
ребенок,
as a person of any age,
становится объектом
especially a
какой-то
child,
дискриминации, когда его
becomes a
толкают, когда
subject
его
of
обзывают,
discrimination, when
у
a child
него
is pushed,
развивается
when a child is
соблазн
called
непреодолимой
names,
силы ответить тем же.
the child, of course,
И он
is
немедленно
tempted
перестает
to
отличаться
answer
от своего
in kind.
гонителя.
And the child
Как только
becomes
агрессору удается
But the child is no longer a bullied
на встречный
kid,
выпад,
but is
эта
a
жертва
bully.
становится ровно
So
таким же
the
агрессором.
minute somebody responds in
Давайте
kind,
это проиллюстрирую.
somebody
Можно у меня
becomes an
короткий
aggressor.
видеоролик?
Can I please show a short
Получится
video
сейчас запустить?
to make my point more obvious? The character in the movie is singing a song. Very famous movie, The Republic of Skid.
А это что за личность?
And who is that person?
А?
Who is that funny character?
Ха! Это что за личность?
Hey you, who is that funny character?
Янкель пришел, еврей.
Yanka
Типичный
is here.
блондинистый
Look
еврей.
at him, a Jew,
Сам ты еврей.
a typical blonde Jew. You are
Ты на
a
кого
Jew.
похож?
Who do you
Типичный
think?
брюнетистый
You look
цыган.
like a brunette
Да,
gypsy.
и погадаю судьбу.
Let me tell you your
Смотрите,
fortune.
здесь
See,
автор себя затем
in
может
this
вести симпатии
short
так явно
video,
распределены,
you
какой
see
молодец
how
Янкель, как сумел за себя
Янкель
постоять.
is good. That's
И
what
за
we feel
этим
when we
мы не
watch
замечаем,
this
что
movie.
Янкель стал
Yankel is
немедленно
great.
точно
He
таким
stood
же
up for
ксенофобом.
himself. But we do not notice that Yankel
Можно сказать,
actually
его
turned into a
спровоцировали, кто первый
xenophobe.
напал.
Of course,
Да,
he was
но мы же не
provoked,
знаем, что
sure.
предшествовало
But
выпаду этого,
we
там,
do
не
not
знаю, как его
know
условно
what
назвать, цыгана. У него тоже была
provoked the
какая-то
first
предыстория.
aggressor. Maybe he also
И вот
had
очень
a
важно в
history, a
воспитании
personal
наших
history.
детей
So it is
вакцинировать их,
very
к сожалению, очень
important when we
актуальное
raise
понятие,
our children
именно
to
против
vaccinate them
такой
against
собственной нетерпимости,
such
встречной агрессии.
intolerance
Почему это
and
так трудно?
such
И что для
aggression
этого
in
нужно?
response. Why is it so complicated, and what do
Почему
we
так
need
трудно? У нас в
to get
психике
there?
есть два этажа.
So why
Это
is it so
классический не
complicated?
метафора,
Well,
это так на
because
тканевом
in our
уровне.
psyche
можно вот
we
мой
have
слайд
basically
показать?
two levels. If I can
Хитрая
please
схемка.
have my
Есть
slides on the
натуральная психика,
screen.
это
So we
основной
have
мотив
the natural
нашей
psyche
психики, такой же,
that
как у
is
животных,
what
у нас с вами до сих пор
motivates
никогда не
us,
было.
that is
Отвечает
the
за большое
same as
количество
animals
наших
have.
ежечасных
So that
проявлений.
is something
Есть
that is
высшая
responsible
психика,
for our
сугубо
everyday life.
человеческая
And we
настройка,
have a supreme
локализованная в
psyche,
коре головного
which
мозга.
is very specific to humans,
Натуральная
and it
психика
is
у нас у животных
localized
одинакова. Она
in
импульсивна,
the cortex
одноходова.
of the
Ты
brain.
грубишь, не
So, of
груби.
course, the natural
Ты кривляешься,
psyche
не
is very
кривляйся.
simple.
Это просто
You
прямолинейное
know, do
отрицание
not be
какой-то
rude,
неприятности.
do not
А высшая
tease somebody.
психика
But
у людей
the
реагирует не на
supreme
поведение,
psyche
не на
doesn't
опыт, а
react
на
to
причину,
somebody
на
else's
эмоции, которые
behavior,
движут этим
but it
поступком.
reacts to the emotions which motivate the
Взаимоотношения
behavior
этих двух
and to the
этажей
reasons
регулируются очень
behind
простым
it.
фактором.
And
Это
of course,
страх.
the relationship
Чем
between
сильнее
these
страх,
psyches
чем
is
острее
regulated
стресс,
by fear.
тем в
The
большей степени он
stronger is the fear,
выключает ненужные
the
для
more
тонкости
acute
высшей
is the
психики,
stress,
пускает
the more
природную,
often
натуральную.
the
Убить
supreme
или
psyche
убежать.
is switched off, and then the
Поэтому, как
natural
только
fight-or-flight
человек любого возраста,
response is
особенно
kicked
ребенок, у
in.
которого выше
That is
психические
why
расстройства,
when we
оказывается
have a
объектом
kid
агрессии,
with underdeveloped
провокации
supreme
очень
psyche,
сильна.
if the kid feels aggression,
действительно
then the
важно
provocation will be
наших
extremely
детей
strong.
приучать
That is why
к
it is so
пониманию,
important
просто к
to
содержательному
train
пониманию
our
чужого
children
поведения,
to
особенно
understand
поведения
other people's
негативного.
behavior, especially
В этом
when this
смысле на
behavior
всем
is
очень висит
negative.
какая бы то ни была
So in
оценка.
this regard,
Выражение
of
«хороший
course,
мальчик», «плохой
evaluation
мальчик»,
is
«злой человек»
something
и
that
даже
doesn't
«добрый
help
человек»
us. Let's say
это
good
тоже
boy,
оценочность.
bad boy, or kind person. This is
Знаете,
all
100 лет назад
evaluation.
я был в одной семье, там 4-летний мальчик
I
пришел
visited
с
one
прогулки и
family a
сказал
long time
с
ago,
каким-то
and a
изумлением,
4-year-old
что
boy came back
дядька
from
сейчас
a walk,
проехался по
and
экспедиции
he
на мотоцикле.
said that there was a guy
И
who
я,
rode a
говоря, что тогда не был
motorcycle
психолог,
through
я не
their
знал, кто
sandpit.
психолог.
At
Я не
that
знаю,
time,
кто-то обидел,
I
он ехал,
didn't
не
used to
разбирая
be a
дороги.
psychologist, and I
А
said, well,
мама
maybe
говорит,
somebody
никто его не
hurt
обижал,
his
просто
feelings,
злой дядька.
so he lost his way.
Вот от
And
этой
his
точки
mother said,
расходятся две
well,
разных
nobody
жизненных
hurt his
траектории
feelings,
этого
he's
ребенка.
just an
В
evil
одном случае он
man.
будет
So you see,
воспринимать
there
его
are two
поведение
points of view. On
содержательно,
one one point of view will give a child an understanding of what motivates a person. Another point of view will just basically rank that person. So any xenophobia, any racism is motivated by psychological states. This is a state of being unwell. And people who are aggressive just want other people to show them that although they're aggressive and ugly in their behavior, they still want to be seen and heard. A child
Ребенок получает от нас, родителей, такую сориентированность.
What a child gets from the parents, it gets a system of values, it gets different vectors. A child can see what's happening around, but they also listen to us and how we react to the situation around us. And of course, it's understandable what sort of comments we have when we look at everything that's happening around us. We see anti-Semitism, we see increasing social tensions. It's really hard to control ourselves. It's really hard to keep ourselves in check and remain unbiased. But when we do manage to do that, we can value even more how hard it is for our children not to respond to somebody else's aggression in kind. And of course, it is hard to generalize. Of course, we need to fight anti-Semitism, but we do not need to fight anti-Semites. Well, with this, I conclude my short talk, and I'm ready to take your questions. Thank you very much. You made a very strong point. It really makes us think. So, Alexandra, if you don't mind, maybe I will ask you to sit back down. And right here we have a panel of great experts, so we can talk about your points. And right now I would like to introduce everybody who is a member of our panel. So we just listened to the talk from Alexander Kalmanovsky, a psychologist. While I was listening to him, I thought I would like to, maybe enroll in his classes to listen to him more. We also have Natalia Rodikova, the editor-in-chief of the Good House magazine. We have Mikhail Lipkin, director of ORT Russia. We have Yulia Varshavskaya, editor-in-chief of Forbes Woman and Forbes Life. We will also have Alexander Smolov, doctor of psychology, professor, director of the Federal Institute for the Development of Education. He will join us on Zoom. We have Lyudmila Yuraskina, executive director of the Orphanage Foundation. We have Nadia Popudoglu, chief editor of an online male magazine. This is the most important publication we have in Russia on education of children. And we have Maria Ivanova, author of and developer of complex educational, developmental, human-centered environments and educational products in the field of education. So, do we have any questions for Alexander, or do we want to discuss the topic that he proposed at length? I am pretty sure that people who are watching us online probably have a lot of questions, so please submit your comments, give us your feedback, and send us your questions. So I would like to ask Mikhail Lipkin to talk about this topic. Mikhail Lipkin is the director of ORT School, Russia. So we talked about empathy, we talked about humanism, we talked how we shouldn't look for an enemy. How did you solve these problems in the ORT school? Well, I am not a school principal, fortunately, and school principals understand why being a school principal is a very hard job. Well, I'm not a high school principal, but I think that school is a very very important institution, because any kid, and by the way, today when we talk about school, we start talking about kindergarten and finish with high school. So children are enrolled in the system from the age of 3 to the age of 17. So a kid spends 13 or 14 years in school, and they spend more time in school than with their families. That's why it's very important to look at the time that a child spends in school, because that's where a personality is forged. One of our ORT schools, Moscow Technological ORT schools, started working as an inclusive school, and not because we just consciously made that choice, but because at some point in time we realized that when we're talking about engineering and precise sciences, we had a lot of children with strange behavior. Well, of course, back then we knew nothing about autism. So it started with that, and in 20 years we built a fully fledged model of inclusive education. So to kick off this discussion on promoting empathy and humanism, and about bringing up a person who loves living in the world of people, I would like to give you a story. Once we had a kid with autism. He joined grade 5, and when we're talking about grade 5, children who attended, they do not yet have the natural aggression that appears by grade 7 or 8. So we have kids. And when we talk with kids who are not normotypical, they do not experience any aggression from their classmates. And at some point in time, this boy, let's call him Sasha, let's say 6 months after he joined our school, he had a tutor, and about 6 months after he joined our school, his parents decided to invite his classmates to visit their country house for the weekend. So when we're talking about inclusion, for whatever reason, we think that we are helping special children, but I want to look at it from a different point of view. Children of parents of normotypical children, they came up to Sasha's parents and they said, we don't know actually who benefited more in the last 6 months, your boy or our kids who had the chance to study in the same grade with him. So this experience of being with different people coming from different ethnicities, different religions, people who have different behavior, different perception of reality, different ways to communicate. This is a truly invaluable experience which inclusivity gives to children. And now, 20 years after the start of our project, we see that children who graduate from an inclusive school are really different. They are more adapted to life, they have more empathy, and I would say they are even more humane. I think that this model, of course, can be extended not just to children who have limitations when it comes to health. It can include children who, let's say, do not speak Russian, or children who come from families with a complicated background. So when we have this diversity, I think it makes us healthier as a society. Thank you very much. It is very interesting because usually we look to find education for our children in a more sort of socially close environment. But what you're saying really breaks up this concept. Well, I sent my children to an inclusive school because I believe my children will gain a lot more. Yulia, I would like to ask you, because you know this situation from a different side. Yeah, thank you very much. And of course, Mikhail mentioned things which are extremely important for me. Unfortunately, in this country, inclusion is viewed as a form of charity, whereas inclusion, of course, should be a societal norm. Everybody needs inclusion, and I think neurotypical children and their parents need inclusion more. I am a mother with a child who is on the spectrum. I am also the supervisor of the Zhuravlik Charity Fund, so I promote inclusivity. And I can tell you that inclusivity is never a problem for the kids. It's always a problem because of what children hear from their families. I had different experiences with my kids. I was also looking at what happens with the kids who are part of our charity foundation. And I can tell you that children always treat children who are different in an absolutely normal way. And there was a video that was made by the Naked Heart Foundation. They had an experiment. They had two rooms, and one room was empty, and there was a child with a Down syndrome in another room. They would let children of different ages into the rooms, and children were given a choice whether to go to an empty room or to a room where there was a kid with Down syndrome. Unlike autism, children with Down syndrome are easier to recognize. So the younger was a kid, the higher was the chance that they would choose the room with a kid who had a Down syndrome. So children over 5 chose an empty room. And the research shows us that the older a kid is, the more they're influenced by different social stereotypes brought to a kid by their parents. I never had issues when it comes to educating my kids, and I never had an issue coming from children. I always had issues with other parents, school principals, school teachers, and so on. That's why I believe inclusion is something that is really needed for the adults. So the understanding of how inclusion influences children is very important. And we're not just talking about school. Inclusion should be everywhere. My kid goes to an inclusive soccer club. This club has different children with Asperger's syndrome, children with Down syndrome, and other kids are normotypical. So when you see how these kids play together, you understand how inclusivity works. When my kid stops in the middle of the game and wants to discuss molecular biology, all other kids do not start yelling at him that, hey, you are ruining the game. No, they also stop and they tell him that he needs to run to the goal. And that's how inclusion works. And so nearby there is a professional football team, and their kids are shouted at. Kids are taught to be the same and to stick to the same standards. And kids who come out from these two clubs are completely different kids. Therefore, if we are saying that we are choosing schools which have children similar to us, that means we choose people with similar values.
Alexander, I wanted to forward this question to you. Based on what we have discussed briefly, the issue lies in the stereotypes and the fact that parents are not adapted to empathy. It's too late to educate parents. We still can educate children, so we can educate kids. But what about parents who say that the bad guy who ran over the sandbox, or his dummy, and then this dummy, it's spread through, among the children because somebody's mother just said it. So what could be done to educate parents? How can we deal with parents? There is no age specific. The issue is not non-age specific. If we realize that, a child who is aggressive, cruel, we have to warm him up with our attitude. The same has to be done with the parents, not to point to their disadvantages as aggressiveness, but work with them. I would like to add a couple of words on inclusion. commenting on what Michael have said, there was a psychologist, Akop Nazaretian. He was engaged in interdisciplinary research where he have demonstrated that the scientific progress, technical progress, technological progress is related to tolerance in the society and actually follows the level of tolerance. So we have mentioned the two levels of psycho. The more protected the child is feeling when they see the caring attitude towards special children, such children feel better and such children are developing faster. That means they understand that their non-standard modes of behavior will be approved. Welcome. Well, there is an old Russian saying that when they beat the cat, they mean daughter-in-law. And now I would like to give the floor to Lyudmila Yuraskina, who is Executive Director of the Orphanage Foundation, who will share with us a very interesting experience related to social tolerance. Lyudmila, the floor is yours. I'm Lyudmila. I am Executive Director of the Orphanage Foundation. The topic that I would like to present here are general humanistic values or value-oriented approach at the foundation of spiritual education. Our foundation was founded in 1997 and started as volunteer movement. As of 2004, we are a registered organization, and our target audience are children who are in the orphanages, boarding schools, rehabilitation centers, and centers of family education. So there is a term now in Russian which is socialization, and our main task is to socialize orphans. Based on the experience we have developed a paradigm of socialization, and for us it's a value-oriented approach in the development of character. And the focus is on developing good character. I apologize for my long presentation because I would like to say a lot, that's why I'll skip a few slides, and I will try to say briefly about the main things which we believe are the core of our work and what we understand in socially oriented approach, social values oriented approach, because spirituality is a very important topic and a deep one. The mission of our foundation is to provide quality assistance to the orphans, to socialize them, and I will not read it here because too many words, to bring them as a good character people. And to put it in few words, what we do, it's a proverb. The one who will sow thought will ripe fate. The one who ripe a habit. The one who sow a habit will ripe destiny. And I will now demonstrate how it is reflected, how this approach is reflected in our events. So we set good characters as a priority, and in our logo we have emphasized the qualities which are characteristic of a noble person, it can be attributed as common shared human values such as kindness, love, honesty, and strong strong will. So let's show how this value-oriented approach is reflected in our events and the example of children's sport competition. So, we definitely involve all the senses, all the sensorics, and this value-oriented approach is part and parcel of our approach. Shared values for everyone. You see, it's not just sport event. We have these qualities within Olympic Olympic rings. Altius, Situs, Fortus is traditional, but we also added be more kind and honest. There are 24 teams from all the regions and countries of the FSU, 12 disciplines, and I'm trying to integrate the values in all these symbols. The streets are named after the values. We are running quests, there is a competition in team greetings. So all these values should be infused in children's subconscious. We are issuing the games newspaper, and the event itself for 4 days. The kids are engulfed in the world of sports and in the world of values at the same time. And the same is true for all the projects. We have this part of community service, of public service. The children who are in closed educational establishments, such as orphanages, it's very important for them to do something for other people. They learn to get pleasure from helping others. And definitely, success stories are very important. It's very important to arrange meetings with important people, successful people who may be set as an example. Creativity it's all infused with general values. And theater plays, newspapers, they publish quests. I'm repeating myself. And definitely, the second part of my presentation are seminars for teachers that our foundation is arranging, is organizing, dedicated to general values and to spiritual education. And there are different vectors, 4 vectors of socialization of children that we are organizing our seminars about spiritual education and general human values. The program we have selected from Kazakhstan program, self-knowledge, know yourself program. It's implemented in all the schools of Kazakhstan from grade 1 to grade 11. I'm a little bit nervous because I'm first time I'm speaking at such a forum. 5 shared human values. From the 1st grade to 11th grade, this program is implemented. There are textbooks.
Соответственно, мы реализуем в госдуховно-нравственное образование, который
And we are implementing the state educational standards of spiritual education, spiritual and moral education, which became the standard in the Russian Federation. Ludmila, thank you very much. The time is over. I'd like to ask you a question. So you do have certain idea of how such children should be brought up, the children who are in orphanages, in boarding schools. Do you have any measurements, so to say? Do you see the results between the children you bring up in the spirit of shared human values and children who are not? Well, We do analyze the results of our school that our foundation takes care of, where we run our programs, camps, events on a regular basis. So the percentage, the degree of socialization, degree of children who are enrolled in universities, they are more creative, they are our volunteers, they enter universities. So you see the result. The results are visible. Thank you very much. It was applaud to Lyudmila Yuraskina, Executive Director of the Orphanage Foundation. We do have questions now. Alexander Kalmanovsky, you have a question from our audience. Going back to the beginning of our conversation, if at home parents have a habit of decreasing child's abilities or label people around, while the school is providing correct education based on principles of humanistic values and principles of tolerance. So which of these two worlds will win? Well, parents always win. So we have to educate because, well, by the time the child goes to school, he or she had already absorbed some basic values. Then the psyche of any person, psychology of any person, is the derivative of his parents' psychology. So the school has to understand that when parents' values do not match those of school, it is impossible to project our values circumventing those of parents. So parents also should be included. Now I suggest we have a presentation by two authors, Alexander Malyshev and Sergei Zakharov. Alexander Malyshev is sociologist, and he investigates fatherhood in the Sociology Institute of the Russian Academy of Sciences. And Sergei Zakharov is an expert in the field of social work with men, heard of the Rosotcovstvo portal, which means fatherhood. So what the role of fathers in influence on our children. It's a pre-recorded presentation.
День, дорогие друзья,
Good afternoon,
коллеги.
dear
Мы очень
friends,
рады
dear colleagues.
присутствовать на сегодняшнем круглом столе воспитания
It is a
гуманизма
pleasure
в
for us
детях.
to
И
be
я,
part
Сергей Захаров,
on
и мой
this
коллега Александр
round
Малышев
table discussing
сегодня
promoting
поговорим,
empathy and
представим
humanism
вам
in children. And
небольшую презентацию о
I'm
практике
Sergei
поддержки
Zakharov, and my
разрешенного
colleague
отцовства.
will
Я
share with you a
представлю
small
нас чуть
presentation. Let me introduce ourselves.
Как я сказал, Сергей
I'm
Захаров.
Sergei
Я
работаю
работаю
and I'm working.
по образованию.
I'm a psychologist by
и
training.
Менеджер в социальной сфере. Давно работаю в социальной
Work in
сфере.
social
В
management.
благотворительном центре,
I
еврейском
work
благотворительном
in
центре
the
Авраам.
Jewish
Уже с 2007
charity
года
center
в
Hesed
различных
Avram
проектах, в основном
from
связанных
1998
с
in
уходом за
different
пожилыми, но так
projects,
получилось,
mostly
что
dedicated to
с
care of
2008 года я
elderly. But
параллельно
as of 2008, at the
развиваю
same time, I'm developing
тему, связанную с
the
поддержкой отцовства
issue
в
dedicated to
каких-то
supporting
совместных
fatherhood
проектах различных.
in joint projects.
Мой коллега Александр Малышев,
And
социолог,
my colleague
исследователь
Alexander
отцовства и
Malyshev,
ассоциированный
sociologist
научный сотрудник
who studies fatherhood,
Исторического института РАН.
and he's
Вот мы вдвоем
associate of
сегодня
Sociology Institute of the Russian
кратко
Academy of Sciences.
пробежаться
So we'll try
по
today
отцовству.
to briefly
Я скорее буду
investigate and
отвечать за
report
практические
on the fatherhood. I'm responsible
вещи,
for
которые есть
practical
уже в
issues
поддержке отцовства,
in support of
Александр у нас
fatherhood,
будет
while
отвечать за
Alexander
цифры
will be
и за
responsible for
теорию.
numbers and
Передаю слово
theory.
Саше, чтобы
And I now pass the floor to
сделать небольшую теоретическую
Alexander
вступление.
for his theoretical
Саша,
introduction.
пожалуйста.
Здравствуйте, коллеги.
Good morning, dear colleagues.
Слайд. Да, сейчас в современном мире
In the
и
modern world,
отцовство, и
fatherhood
родительство, и материнство
and parenthood in general and motherhood
меняются. Мир меняется,
are
соответственно, меняются тоже
being
эти
changed.
институты.
The world is changing,
Происходит
so these institutions are
переосмысление роли
changing as
отца в
well.
жизни детей.
And
Представление о нем как
the
преимущественно защитники и
role of
кормильца
father in
семьи
the life of family is reevaluated, and the idea of the father as the provider for the family
уступают
and
место
defender of the family
идеологии
is
вовлеченного
giving
отцовства.
place to
Отца,
involved fatherhood
который
by
активно
the father who
включен
is
в
actively
воспитание,
involved in the
уход
upbringing
за
and
детьми.
taking care and
Отцы
child care.
становятся все более вовлеченными в уход за детьми,
Fathers are
непосредственное
more and more
общение с ними,
involved in
повышается
child care and
доступность отца для
communication
ребенка
with
и
them.
степень
The
ответственности
availability
за
of
благосостояние
fathers
ребенка,
for
который
the
отец
parents
принимает на себя.
is increased,
Эти
and the degree of responsibility of the father
скажем
that
так, давно
father
уже и активно
accepts upon
разворачиваются
himself is
в
increasing.
Западной
This
Европе,
process
что
are
демонстрируют исследования,
going broader and broader
но
in the Western
они
Europe,
начинают
as confirmed by the studies,
появляться
but
и в
they
России,
are
хотя, может
already
быть, немножко
appearing in
медленнее
Russia,
все еще.
albeit a little bit slower.
Вот перед вами данные
These are the results
исследований
of the
2013
study
года и
of
2015-2016
2013 and 2015,
года. Тут мы
2016.
видим,
Here we see
что
that
почти 45 или под
almost
50%
45.9%, almost
так или
50%
иначе
of
активно
fathers
вовлечены, ну не
are
активно, а
actively involved,
вовлечены
are
в различные
involved
практики
in different
заботы
practices
и
of
воспитания
child care.
детей. Они играют с
They're
ребенком,
playing with kids,
купают своих
they
детей,
giving them
помогают с
bath,
домашними заданиями и так далее. То
help
есть
them with their
примерно
homework.
чуть больше 40%
So,
отцов
a little over
активно
40% of the fathers
взаимодействуют,
are
активно
actively
заботятся о своих
in
детях. Но надо,
taking care of their
но
children.
надо понимать,
However,
в общем-то, и качество
one has to understand the quality
этой
of
заботы, этого
this care.
взаимодействия. И здесь мы видим,
And here we see
что 45%
that 45%
отцов, которые
of
взаимодействуют
the
с детьми, которые
fathers
за них заботятся,
who
делают
take care
это
of children,
вместе с мамой.
they do it together
При этом
with mother.
чаще
And
мать
more
все-таки
often,
это делает сейчас, чем отец.
mother
Вот
is
перед
still
вами
doing
тоже
it than the
данные,
father. Here we
которые
have
это
the
демонстрируют.
results which illustrate
По разным
this
практикам
thesis.
данные немножко отличаются, да?
The data are
но,
somewhat
в общем-то, мы
differ
видим, что в
according
среднем
to different
где-то
sources,
около
but
трети
average,
отцов,
1/3,
может быть, чуть больше,
about
где-то
1/3, maybe a
чуть
little over
поменьше,
1/3 of the fathers, maybe a little less, are
вместе
participating
с
together
мамами
with
в
mothers
заботе о
in
детях. В то же
child care.
время, ну вот мы видим, что цифры,
At
которые
the same time, of course,
указывают на то, что делает
we can
мать,
see the
они все-таки
figures
заметно больше,
for
чем отца в
mothers.
следующем
And
слайде.
of course, mothers, well, they do a lot more.
Так какое же оно современное отцовство?
So,
Вот
how
довольно
does
давно уже
a modern fatherhood look
используется здесь
like?
метафора, связанная со стаканом воды, как
We
старые
use
шутки,
this
полный
metaphor,
стакан не пуст,
a
да?
glass
И
half
вот можно
full or a
сказать,
glass half
что
empty.
в плане
So
отцовства
we can say that when it comes to
стакан,
fatherhood,
связанный с вовлечением отцов в
a
заботу о детях в
glass
России, где-то
that
заполнен на 1/3.
indicates how
Около
much
1/3
fathers participate
отцов
in
включены
child rearing is
в
probably
практике,
only
связанной с заботой о
1/3
детях.
full. So only 1/3
Ну,
of the
от трети
fathers
до
participate in
половины
child
примерно,
rearing.
в зависимости от практики. Но все равно
But
финансовое обеспечение остается наиболее
when it
приемлемой формой
comes
вклада отца в семью, что
to
связано и с
the most
распределением
acceptable
доходов
contribution of a
по
father
разным, так сказать, между
to a
мужчинами и
family,
женщинами в
of
России.
course,
Мужчина
the most
зарабатывает
acceptable
больше,
form
и
is
потеря
financial
дохода
contribution, but
отцом в
that, of
результате
course,
более
also
активного
has to do
включения в
with
заботу в частных
gender
ранних
inequality because
этапах
fathers
развития ребенка,
get
конечно,
paid more.
драматически может сказаться на финансовом положении семьи.
And if a father
Подавляющее
starts
большинство отцов
getting more
считают, что
involved, it
обеспечение
can
материального
negatively
благополучия семьи
influence
является их непреложной
family
обязанностью.
finances.
Видим
The
тоже
majority
данные
of
за
fathers,
2013-2021
92.3%,
год, но они
believe
практически
that
не меняются.
providing financial support to the for the family is what they need to do. At the same time, a lot of fathers are actually ready to get involved in child rearing, and their ideas about what a father should do are not so rigid. There is a trend for more involvement of fathers. So you see figures on the screen, and more than half of our respondents do not agree with the statement that it should be the mother who provides most of child care.
опять же, не соглашаются
At the same
наши
time,
респонденты уже значительно в большей степени с тем, что отец не
our
обязательно должен
respondents
принимать участие в
also
уходе за детьми.
don't
Практически
agree
все
with the statement that the father shouldn't participate in childcare. Almost everybody doesn't participate. Well, this was an announcement of a very interesting report that deals with the impact of fatherhood on upbringing of children. We will have it uploaded to the conference websites, but it is a 20-minute talk, so we do not have enough time to listen to it. But I think this talk gives us something to discuss. Do you think that there is an influence of mothers and fathers when it comes to promoting empathy and humanism in children? Well, they probably have different influence, and who is the most responsible for promoting empathy and humanism in children? Is it mothers or is it fathers? So I would like to ask Alexander Asmolov to comment on that. And Alexander Asmolov is the Doctor of Psychology, Professor, Director of the Federal Institute for the Development of Education. Alexander, can you hear us?
Я приветствую всех вас.
Well, I would like to greet
Добрые
everybody.
люди. Именно словами «здравствуйте, добрые люди»
I would like to
каждый
say
день
good morning,
начинает свой
kind people.
школьную
And
жизнь мой
this
друг
phrase that is
Сергей
used
Казарновский в
by my
школе класс.
friend
И когда мы
Sergei
так приходим
Kazarovsky in the
с
class
самого
school,
начала к
he
людям и
greets
говорит
children
«добрые люди»,
every day by
я думаю, это
saying
уже
good
установка,
morning,
связанная
kind
с тем,
people. And I
что
think
дети
when
в
we
этой
say
школе
that,
не
it
знают
sends a message
других способов общения.
that
мои
children
друзья,
who attend a school like this do
слушая
not
всех выступающих,
know
у
of
меня
other
два
ways to
амбивалентных
communicate.
чувства.
When I was
Первое
listening to all
чувство –
of
это
you, and
чувство
I had
радости,
very
что
ambivalent
понимание
feelings. So the
ценности
first
детства,
feeling is a feeling
понимание
of
того
joy.
или
We
решение
understand
вопроса,
the value
как
of
стать
childhood.
соразмерными детству,
We
которое
understand
безразмерно, сегодня присутствует в нашем общении.
how
Одновременно я
to
чувствую
talk
целый
about the
ряд
childhood.
рисков,
At the
когда
same
мы
time, I
выбрасываем
also
те или
see
иные
a number
конструкты,
of
которые
risks
только
when we
увеличивают
start
наше непонимание
talking
детства.
about certain
Например,
constructs that increase
нейротипичные
our
дети, каких не
misunderstanding of
существует,
childhood. For instance, we
социализация,
talk
которая
about
на самом деле
neurotypical
всегда
children.
выбор типовых форм
We talk
поведения
about
и так
socialization,
далее.
and because
Поэтому
socialization is
я бы хотел
about
сделать несколько буквально
selecting for more
акцентов. Первый
typical
– про
types of
отцов.
behavior.
Про
So the
отцов
first thing I
говорят
wanted to talk
замечательное
about
выступление
is
про отцовство.
fathers, and it
Я
was a very
хочу
interesting
напомнить всем
talk about fatherhood.
слова Марка
So I would
Ритмира.
like
Что такое
to
отец?
remind you of the
Дорогие мои
words of Mark Ritmi.
прекрасные
What,
девушки,
who is
вдумайтесь,
a
Марк
father?
Ритмир, один из
Mark
ведущих культурологов, нежно дает
Ritmit
следующую
gives
характеристику.
us the following
Отец
characteristic.
–
A
это
father
биологическая необходимость
is a
и
biological
социальная случайность.
necessity and a
Когда мы
social
сталкиваемся
accident.
с такой характеристикой, мы
When we
очень
hear a
четко
phrase
понимаем
like this,
многие
we
моменты,
start
связанные в
very
жизни,
clearly
особенно
understanding
последнюю
a lot
статистику
of the
суицидов,
issues,
которая
especially
показывает,
the
что Россия
latest
лидер в мире
suicide
по
statistics, which showed
суицидам
us that
среди мужчин.
Russia
И
is a
это
country
очень
with the
тяжелая
highest
характеристика,
number
в то время
of
как
male
лучшая
suicides.
половина человечества даже в тяжелейших
And
ситуациях
when we talk about women,
умудряется так
women
или иначе придавать устойчивой жизни. Каждый раз,
manage to make
когда мы
life stable in
обсуждаем
the
проблемы
hardest of
толерантности и
contexts.
эмпатии,
Every
мы
time we
занимаемся
talk about
уникальными
tolerance
вещами,
and
а именно
empathy,
искусством
we
и
do
ремеслом
unique
жизни
things.
с непохожими детьми.
We
Каждый раз
talk
наши
about
дети
the
и
art
наши, как
of
говорится, члены семьи
living with
проверяют
children,
нас
with
на
children
толерантность. Я
who
не
are
говорю,
not like
если
us.
кто-то
Every day,
подставит другое
our
слово
tolerance
вместо
gets
толерантности, когда
tested.
вас на что-то
And
проверяют,
of course,
что вы не похожи, вам сразу хочется
when something
абстрагать,
gets
вам сразу
tested,
хочется, как в
we want
маленьком
to
ролике,
say
который
that so
был
we
в
are
начале,
different.
заняться
And
своего
every
рода
time when
ксенофобскими
people
салочками в
point
ответ
out
на
our
то, что вас
differences,
обидели
we
и
want
обидели
to
другие. Поэтому
express
ключевые
xenophobic
моменты, которые мы
tendencies.
должны
That's why we need to try and understand what is upbringing. Upbringing is providing insurance for the risks of childhood. And there was a key point delivered by our colleague who said about the important others. The importance of others is key when we talk about empathy, because empathy is feeling. Empathy is a way to relate to children through feelings and not through cognition and knowledge. So will we manage to become these significant others for our children? Will we manage to become interesting teachers to our children? Will we measure up to the unmeasurable childhood? And the key risks of upbringing are the risks of eliminating differences, are the risks of sameness. These are the largest risks when we are dressed in the same uniforms, when we are issued the same textbooks, when we are told here is a formula according to which you should live your life, and any step away from it is considered to be an escape. And if you jump, it is viewed as an attempt to fly away. So we need to create a value-based humanistic system of upbringing by including our children into significant communications of ours. And that was something that was talked about by many famous teachers, such as Janusz Korczak, among others. And this is a huge task. This is a huge program. There was a program to foster tolerance-based behavior and to prevent racism. There was a Russian program that included a lot of ways how to foster these qualities in children. So today our children actually teach us. Today's children are more interested in their peers than us. So today's children always can solve seemingly impossible tasks, and they are trained to live in an uncertain world. So today we understand the importance of issues that we are discussing, and these issues are fostering empathy, humanism, sympathy in our children. It is very important to foster social intelligence, emotional intelligence. There are a lot of programs that strive to achieve these goals, and there are a lot of programs to unlock a child's potential. I would just like to emphasize one thing. We did a research to see whether sympathy is different in girls and boys, and it turns out that when the children play a game and they win or lose, then a child who wins, boys feel happy for somebody else's victory until they are 6 or 8 years old. And girls do not feel the same joy, or they stop feeling it at the age of 5 or 6. But it is very important to foster this feeling of joy for somebody else's accomplishment. A poet said, people can feel sympathy, but a joy for others is something that is truly angelic. So unless we foster this ability to feel joy for others, we will not manage to tackle the issues at hand. And maybe it makes a point for all of us to think about it. I really like this value-based best approaches to education because they allow us to learn how to live with people who are not like us. There are a lot of phenomena, for instance, a phenomenon of bullying, when somebody becomes an outcast and somebody is ostracized because they are unlike us. Well, this is very important to prevent. Also, theater-based pedagogics are very important. That should be part of childhood starting from the age of 2 or 3. And Erik Erikson, a psychologist, said that even during the very first year of life, a child already learns whether to trust or mistrust the world. That is why we should not miss this very early childhood phase. The early childhood phase means that the child will trust the world. A child will have significant others, and they will not bend and buckle in the life's storms. And life is complex. Life has aggression, xenophobia, intolerance. Therefore, the key issue for our society is the issue about how to remain human, how to remain humane in our inhumane world. And I hope that today's conference will raise these issues, will make us reflect on how to help our children live in this situation. They're very difficult for teachers to manage because our teachers sometimes cannot manage our children because they're so advanced. You should look at the works of Arkady and Boris Strugatsky to reflect on this situation. So the main issue is to understand our kids, to trust our kids, and to be important and significant adults to our kids. So I'm very happy that we're discussing these issues today, and I would like for us to keep discussing these issues today. Thank you very much, Alexandra Smolov. That was Alexandra Smolov, Doctor of Psychology. But of course, the most important issue is how to teach parents to feel joy for others. So it turns out that the issue of parents is probably more pressing than the issue of children. I would like to give the floor to Nadia Papadoglou, the chief editor of the Mel magazine.
Добрый день, друзья, спасибо. Я надеюсь, что
Hello,
я справлюсь с
everybody.
спикером. Обычно это дается мне сложнее всего в жизни. После Александра Асмолова сложно говорить, но...
It's very hard to talk right after Alexander Asmolov, but I will try to approach it from a very practical point of view. When we started talking about emotional intelligence, we turned it from a significant issue into a commodity. And when we do something like this, we alienate the parents. We were really selling EQ to parents, and we were doing it so blatantly that now in our magazine we see that this topic really alienates people once we start selling it directly. Once we start talking how important it is to foster empathy and humanism in children, how important it is to be humane parents. But this is not just a problem of our magazine. This is a problem of all media.
Это к тому, о чем говорили мои коллеги только что.
And this is related to what my colleague just talked about, and I think that this is very important statistics. A PR agency, Mikhailov and Partners, did a review, and you see the results of this poll. You see how we were brought up and how we continue bringing up our children. This is a slide of, corporal punishment. This is a slide of hitting children, but a lot of us still feel unhappy and unloved. So when we talk about humane upbringing, we should talk about traumatized grown-ups who haven't experienced this model when a kid is significant or when a kid has a significant other. But there is good news. In our magazine, we see that the most anxiety-producing topic for parents is how to build a relationship with their kids. And even though it can be very general, by the way, we started a Q&A section in our magazine, and we're getting so many questions that we are having a hard time to answer them. And of course, when we talk about all of these topics, we can bring in directly or indirectly very significant topics. So we can remove this direct focus. That's why we work with really simple topics. For instance, my favorite text is why boys do not need to fight dragons anymore. This is about the fact that boys do not need to be strong and unemotional, because a lot of people think that men should be like Iron Man and girls should be like magic fairies. And I think that is all I can say on the topic. The only thing that I can add, if you open the Mel magazine, then you will see an interview with Alec, who is a student of a university in Tumen, and he has an online journal on xenophobia. And it took us a year to publish this interview because Alec was really afraid of giving this interview, because once you broadcast to a broader audience, you become a target. So we need to raise our children in a way so that nobody is afraid to talk to a broader audience. Nadia, thank you very much. We actually have time to ask you some questions. You touched upon a nerve, and this is a very important issue for all of us, for the organizers on the conference. So how do we sell humanism and empathy to parents? So there is no idiosyncrasy here, so that the word humanism doesn't put people to sleep, so that the word empathy is not associated with coaches or EQ courses. How do we repackage it to make it clear?
Well, it's a challenge for mass media. I visited a lot of conferences this week, and we have discussed the same thing, how to present in the media social impact-related topics. And I have a simple answer. Try to do it through specific examples of concrete people, of simple people's stories, personal stories. Now we have 8 seconds of involved reading in mass media. This is the current reality. So we have 8 seconds to inform the person that will follow 8,000 strokes, keystrokes of the text, which is important for him. So we have 8 seconds to reach the person in Snap, in Facebook or Twitter. You've told us about the boy named Alec, who for 1 year deliberated about giving the interview about his anti-xenophobic project. And today, during this session, we have come to an agreement that we have first to deal with parents. So the parents should resolve their issues first, not to create issues for their children. What do you know about the parents of this boy? How did it become so good?
Они априори хорошие, потому
I
что те
believe
родители,
that
которые
a priori
помогают
they
ребенку в
are
его стремлении получить
nice people
образование
because
и
parents who assist
делать
their
то, что тебе
child
нравится делать, несмотря ни
in
на что,
doing
это
whatever you
хорошие
want
родители,
and get the
поддерживающие. Я
education you want.
надеюсь,
These are
я думаю, сейчас
supportive
Алик услышит
parents,
и
and
будет
I
меньше стесняться.
hope that Alec will
Но в
now
любом
is now
случае,
listening
смотрите,
and he'll be a little bit shy.
очень важно, мне кажется, для
But
современных взрослых
I
именно
believe
в
it's
текущий
very
момент
important for
создавать какие-то
adults
тоже
this day
микроситуации успеха.
to
То есть
create
поэтому
some
мы стараемся
micro
больше хвалить
success
наших
stories.
родителей,
Therefore, we
аудиторию
try
меры.
to
Потому что даже сдержаться там, в
praise
тот
our
момент...
parents,
Да нет,
our
что там
audience,
сдержаться. Родитель,
because
который сорвался, но потом
a
понял, что он
parent
сорвался и сказал,
who lost
прости меня,
his
ребенку.
temper and then
Он уже лучший
apologized
родитель,
to
чем
his
он был
child.
вчера,
He's already
когда
a
он
better parent than the
сорвался,
day before,
ушел, захлопнул за собой
when he
дверь,
just
и осталось вот
lost
это
his
вот.
temper, shut
Дальше
the
идет
door
сильная
and
любовь.
left.
Мы все его, я думаю, видели здесь.
Спасибо большое.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
Я хотела бы немножко подхватить этот разговор
I'd
с
like to
Наташей Родиковой,
proceed
главным редактором
this
издания «Домашний
theme
очаг»,
with
волонтером,
Natalia
таким
Rodikova,
активным
editor-in-chief
волонтером разных
of the
помогающих
Домашний очаг magazine,
мамой приемного ребенка, в общем, человека
with the mother
со
of
всех сторон
adopted
идеально
child,
подходящего нашему разговору.
person who
находящегося
is
в центре педагогического
feeding the
коллапса.
conversation and is also I'm in the center of pedagogical collapse. Well, we are on this constant state of collapse here. Could you dwell a little bit, based on your personal experience, the issue we are discussing here? How can we reach out with this topic? Because there are too many conferences taking place. This is widely discussed in the media, so it becomes a type of populism. How can we transfer from populism to acceptance? Well, I would like to find an approach based on alarm. One of my, so to say, Bible books is a difficult child. If you have experienced difficulty with a child, it means that the child is in a difficult situation. If we have violence in school on part of teachers, that means these teachers are in a difficult situation. If parents are hitting their child, that means that they are vulnerable and are in a difficult situation. Therefore, I would like to draw attention to the fact that it's not a matter of a concrete family. I would not exaggerate the role of parents. For me, mothers of teenagers and even adult teenagers, I would question the adage that family always wins. The society is always broader. I'm from a very simple family, from a very simple social strata. My kids went to a very plain, simple school. I've traveled a lot to Russia. I've seen people in Russia who survived with 8,000 rubles income. People sometimes have money just enough for vodka to remove the anxiety. How can, with such level of anxiety, one feel so safe in order to bring up tolerance in children, tolerance in any respect? Therefore, I believe that until the socio-economic background will not be more prospering, more calming, there are more risks for adults here. You cannot accept responsibility. Until my children have reached the age of 12, I was sure that it's enough to give them good books so they would share good values, see different children. Then you are competing with other institutions. For example, I don't know how to compete with certain groups in social media or with teenagers with whom my kids spend more time than with me, and with the entire media background around them and with the socio-economic situation that's developing around them. So here I'm inclined to think that not everything depends on us. We are not God. So, did I answer your question? That means you want just to leave us with the notion that everything is bad, And that's it.
Даш, мы не для этого тебя пригласили.
We didn't invite you for this. Sorry.
Давай нам какие-то решения.
Please
Ну, скажи,
give
здесь много
us some
психологов,
certain
но всё
solutions. We
равно.
have a lot of psychologists here in the panel.
И как дальше ты решаешь эту проблему?
So how do you resolve the issue?
Мне кажется, важно это осознавать.
I believe it's important to realize it.
Осознаешь,
Because once you realize
более
it,
трезво мыслишь.
then you
Можно
have a
сколько
sober
угодно устраивать
approach.
круглых столов и делать
One may
такие маленькие
arrange
лаборатории толерантности
thousands
в
of
лучших
round
московских школах,
tables,
даже не
run
российских.
microlabs
Если
for
все
tolerance
остальные,
in the best Moscow
100
schools.
миллионов
But
живут
unless
так, что
the
им не вообще,
rest
ну, как
of
бы,
the
у них вопрос
population, the
выживания на
other
первом месте
100
стоит, это
millions,
действительно очень
are
высокий уровень тревожности
just
у
involved in
всех.
the struggle to
И недавно я в
survive.
электричке видела
It's a high
совершенно
anxiety
потрясающего
level.
полицейского, который
I've
вез
seen
свою жену и
in a
ребенка
suburban
куда-то
train a
в
policeman who
Московскую
was
область, куда-то они ехали.
escorting
Вот.
his
И я видела,
wife
насколько
and
этому человеку,
child
в принципе,
to
тяжело справляться
Moscow
со своими
region,
эмоциями, как он
and I
боится, что
saw
этот ребенок
how
скажет слово
vulnerable
громче,
he is,
чем
how
ну, как бы,
this
чем
policeman
средний уровень шума,
was
что он
afraid for
посмотрит
his
в окно
child
не
to
вовремя и
scream
так далее.
loudly, to
И
say
мне было
something
безумно
above the
жалко
general
сначала
noise
ребенка,
level. And
а
first
потом
I
мне
felt
безумно
sorry
жалко стало
for the
этого
child,
бедного,
and
нервного
then
отца.
I felt sorry for his
И мне кажется,
poor,
что вот мы сейчас
nervous
все такие
father.
примерно,
And I
боимся
believe we
этого.
are all at the same
Потому что, ну,
level
короче
now. We
говоря,
are all
я
in
надо
his
психолога искать,
situation.
психотерапию все.
So I prescribe
Юля, я хотела,
psychotherapy for
дать
everyone.
слово вам, потому что все-таки вы как главный
Юлия.
редактор Forbes, ключевое слово теперь сейчас Forbes, а не Woman, а не Life. Считаете ли вы, что это, в принципе, проблема
You
первого
as
мира?
editor-in-chief of the Forbes magazine,
Мне
Forbes
кажется,
is
что
more important
наоборот,
than women and Forbes
то, что мы
Life.
сейчас обсуждаем, это не проблема
I
первого
think
мира.
it's not
То, что
the
сказала Наташа,
issue of the first
чрезвычайно
world,
мне отзывается,
and
потому
what
что
Natalia had said,
когда еще
I
работая в
found a
Меле,
response within me when I
я
worked
придумала
in
рубрику
Mel.
«Правила воспитания», и я читала
presented
комментарии к этой.
the,
Там были прекрасные
ru-
родители. Вот
the
те
rules
самые
of
прекрасные примеры,
education
о которых говорила
section.
Надя и Наташа
They were
Водянова, даже,
wonderful
которая
parents,
попала
and we had
слайд.
wonderful examples. We had
Федя
Natasha
Катасонов. Ну, в
Vadyanova,
общем, все наши
Fyodor
детские
Katasonov,
друзья.
all our great
Прекрасные отцы
friends
в том числе.
and
Так
wonderful
вот,
fathers, by the way.
большинство комментариев, не знаю,
So
помнит ли
the
это Надя,
majority
под
of comments, I don't
правилами
know if
воспитания
Nadezhda
были,
remembers
а
it.
для какой страны вы воспитываете этих детей?
So most of the comments were,
Более
which
того,
country
этот
are
же
you bringing
вопрос
your
задала
kids
себе
for?
я, когда
I
узнала,
have
что у
asked
моего
the
сына
same
в школе,
question to
прекрасной,
myself,
инклюзивной,
asked
волшебной
myself the same
школе,
question when I learned that in
есть
my son's school, a wonderful school, all-inclusive school, they have democracy hour when they, as equals, discuss with the principal and the teachers what's wrong in school, what they don't like in school, and they are taught to express their position with, at the same level
Вот,
as
и я,
their
когда об этом
authority,
услышала,
school
сначала очень
authority.
обрадовалась, и потом
So first I
испугалась,
liked it
потому
very
что мой
much, and then I
чудесный
got
сын выйдет в
scared
этот
because
мир, и когда он
my
скажет слово
wonderful
«демократия»
son
на улицах
will
наших городов,
go
что он услышит в
outside
ответ?
to the
И мне
streets,
кажется, что
and
то,
will
что
he
сказала
say the
Наташа,
word democracy?
чрезвычайно
What
важно,
will
это не
he
просто
hear back?
тревожность, это страх.
So Natalia
Но
told me
что мне
it's
кажется,
important. It's not
и
anxiety,
если
it's
уж надо
fear.
что-то позитивное
It's fear.
сказать,
So if I have to say something
мне кажется,
positive,
что
I believe that
мы сейчас
Now
двигаемся в том направлении,
we
когда
are
постепенно
heading towards
вырастает поколение, которое
the
на самом деле
generation
совершенно другими ценностями. И
with
если вы посмотрите
different
сериал
values.
Sex Education,
So
то вы
if
поймете, что
you will
не через там,
watch Sex
2 года, но
Education
через 10 лет наши все дети и подростки
movie,
будут такие, как в этом сериале, и
you'll
это уже
understand that
очевидно.
in
Я
10
вижу
to
это на
12
примере
years,
тех
all our
подростков,
teenagers
с
will
которыми
be
я
shown
постоянно
in that
общаюсь,
soap.
своих стажеров, с
So I
ребятами, которые у меня были
see
в
my
Меле, которым я
interns,
читала
I
лекции.
see the kids that visited my lectures.
Недавно я в одном интервью с Еленой
And
Нусимовой,
recently, in one of my interviews with Елена Nusimova, editor-in-chief of Commerce
не надо
Weekend,
говорить о новой этике с людьми, которым
said,
лечили зубы без анестезии.
don't
Но,
talk
и
about
это
new
гениально
ethics
просто.
to the
Вот
people
просто
who
можно
were
себе
visited
татуировку
dentists without
Но
anesthetics.
люди, которым лечили зубы
I
без
think we can have a
анестезии,
tattoo
в
with
какой-то
this
момент
slogan.
придется выучить правила
But
нового
no,
общества.
you know, the
И эти
people who
правила,
pass
так или
through
иначе, и бизнес, если уж ты спрашиваешь про Forbes,
through
двигается тоже в этом
tooth
направлении.
treatment without
Нас всех
anesthetics,
заставят
they will have to learn
жить в
new rules.
гуманном обществе, потому что сегодня
We'll all
общество
have to live in
развитое,
humanistic society because
движется в этом направлении.
developed
И
society
мне
is
кажется,
now
что мы сейчас
moving
переживаем,
toward that
конечно, очень
toward
сложный
that
период.
end, toward that direction, and
И
we are
эта
now
вся история с
passing a
новой
very
этикой,
difficult
которая,
period.
собственно,
So this
построена на
whole
гуманизме и
thing with
эмпатии,
new ethics built on humanism
конечно,
and
дается
empathy,
нам тяжело.
of course,
Но
is a hard
лет 10,
thing for us. It's
наверное,
hard for us
15,
to grasp.
мы
But
туда
in another
придем,
10
мне
to
так
15
кажется.
years, we'll get there. That's my opinion.
Миша, а я хотела вот вам переадресовать эту реплику,
Michael,
на самом деле.
I would like
Вот
to
у вас,
pass
Уорд
the ball
опять
to you.
школа, да?
So Ort has 5 schools in
Для
Russia.
какой страны готовите этих детей,
For
которые
what?
в инклюзивных школах
For which countries
учатся?
are
Вам
you
не страшно, что они со своими
bringing
вот
up
этими
the children? For which country are educating the children that are educated in your schools? Aren't you scared that they, with their tolerance values, humanistic values, will join the society that's not ready to accept them with these humanistic values? No, I'm not afraid, and I'll explain why. The thing is that the experience of working with different people and life experience, including working with the aggressive people, with people with different understanding of justice, or different interests, I believe it's a universal feature. We are not bringing up pink ponies who are unable to exist in a general society, just kids who are able to exist in the media of different people. Because school is not just your classmates. These are teachers, exams, state tests. This is the whole entire set of standard life procedures. Therefore, I believe that the schools, our school that we work in Russia, they prepare, they train a well-prepared, well-fitting Russian citizens who fit the society. Therefore, I believe that the inclusive model is universal in that respect, because you understand that it's this way is possible and that way is possible and the other way is possible. As Alexander just said, we either see the child who is behaving strange. For example, my school was just a neighborhood school, and we had a boy. Now I understand that he probably had ADHD syndrome. So I remember the teacher took this boy, sat him on the first desk right next to the blackboard, isolated him not to prevent, in order to prevent him from mixing with other children and, disturb the class. She was unable to understand what's going on in the class. Here we see that the teachers understand. I can give you an example of a child with ASD.
Я когда говорю ученикам, приготовьтесь к уроку, мальчик берет рюкзак и вытряхивает все на парту. Значит, это все рассыпается таким слоем огромным, весь класс хохот, и у меня полурока сорвано. Мне кажется, он надо мной издевается. А 10 раз они очень редко издеваются. Да, у них немножко другой механизм. Значит, психолог говорит, давайте с ним побеседуем и спросим, почему он так делает. Выяснилось, что этот мальчик настолько сильно любит эту учительницу, So the psychologist talked to the child, and it turned out that when he loves this teacher so much that he is trying to get ready for the class as fast as possible upon her request. And in his opinion, is just to empty his backpack, to put everything he has on the table on his desk. So once the kids understood what's going on with the child, once they realized that he is not making fun of his teacher, but he's just behaves differently, the situation has changed. Yes. So therefore, I'm saying that we are training people to live in any society who will not label people as bad people or stupid because just he emptied his backpack and his pencils on the desk. I just imagined my child. He does have ASD, but he behaves the same way. Anna may add a couple of words. If we are talking about educating of not the democracy but education of tolerance and which country these children will fit, well, then these kids are not accepting inevitable aggression and competition upon their own behalf. They understand that whatever the person is misbehaving, it signals some disadvantage of this person. Now the floor goes to Maria Ivanova.
Who is the author and developer of complex educational and development, human-centered environments and educational products in the field of education? Good afternoon. All these long titles next to my name means that I'm developing educational programs. I'm consultant like McKinsey or BCG, but in a very narrow area.
А можно презентацию? Вот, и у меня, конечно, мне очень радостно здесь сегодня быть, я очень признательна за приглашение. У меня такое ощущение, что я сейчас должна немножко обобщить практически все ценности, которые коллеги сказали, и хочется... А на что тут нужно нажимать?
What should I press?
На кликер.
Я не знаю.
I don't know.
Помогут. Помогите, пожалуйста.
Хочется рассказать немножечко, продолжить, спасибо. Продолжить немножко тему, которую начала Наталья, и я очень за нее благодарна. Я стала думать, а почему, собственно, гуманизм, о котором мы говорим, вызывает такую проблему? Вот есть определение, гуманизм — это что-то, что создает человека. Собственно, родители в состоянии покоя, когда мы чувствуем себя в безопасности, когда мы спокойны, мы, собственно, для своих детей это и создаем. То есть мы действительно создаем среду, в которой ребенок растет и развивается как личность.
People sitting here, as Natalia said, 25% of large cities which are not thinking about survival but just living. So they don't see what's the problem here. I wouldn't have been a consultant without showing this frame. I think it's very important to understand because we all as parents are within certain frames. And we have to understand what are the roots of anxiety and why it's increasing, and why do we have to pay more attention to the way we should treat ourselves. So the world is not just vulnerable, it's a brittle world. We can't rely on anything because we are in anxiety context, and anxiety is increasing. Has increased last year especially. So now we don't have a deficit of knowledge, but we have in-depth experts who may explain this or that aspect of the world. Nevertheless, the world have not become more available for our knowledge. So how does it influence the parents? These based on my 10-year experience of development of educational products for the parents. Now we have a lot of changes. And by saying the same words, we mean different things. And sometimes we don't take it into account. So now we are not choosing our professional career for the entire life. Now gender is not for life. So now we have a lot of choices. And it's hard to be stable in anything. So the fact that the child does not receive his entire knowledge in the beginning of his life, but is involved in continuous lifetime education, it's common knowledge.
So how does it influence the role of parents? I look at parents in large cities and I see that they are afraid to lose authority. But I would tell you that overall we compete with social media. We are in competition with bloggers and opinion leaders. So I believe an alternative to authority should be creating an environment of trust and safety. If we create this environment, then we do not need to know everything, then we do not need to have an out-of-this-world charisma. And maybe what I'm going to say is a bit confrontational, but some parents want to just find this one unique school and build this unique connection for the next 13 or 14 years for a kid. But I think not everybody has an opportunity to enroll their kids into the best school, a school that would be the most suitable for a kid. So I think we should think about it as not just one school, but a lot of diverse environments. We can have different extracurricular activities, different sports, different schools. So a parent becomes a producer who finds these environments. And so the key change in the role of parents, I believe, is that a modern parent doesn't need to transfer their experience. A modern parent learns together with their kid. Those of us who are over 35 were born in the pre-digital era, but our kids' minds were shaped by digital tools. So I'm 41, my daughter is 20, and I always turn to her for help when it comes to using technology. So I was trying to find a definition for a long time. It's not prefigurative culture when children teach the previous generation. I think it is a bit of a diffuse type of upbringing when we get new experience together with our children. Yesterday at dinner, we discussed the pernicious nature of anti-Semitism. But I believe if we learn how to change, if we create these developmental experiences for our kids and ourselves, if we reflect on it and we acknowledge that we do not need to be the best, if we acknowledge that we will learn throughout our lifetime together with the kids, that's when we get rid of the tension that leads ultimately to anxiety. And we talked a lot about therapy as a very useful tool. I believe that therapy is important, but maybe not therapy as a tool, but rather taking care of our mental and psychological health. Humanism is when a parent translates humanistic values to a child, but when a parent is unstable, it is very hard for them to do that. And it's very hard to try and fit a difficult child into some kind of mold. But if we learn together with our kids, then we can stop and think what is going on, what went wrong. So I wanted to share these aspects of the changing role of parents, and I'm very happy that I had an opportunity to talk to you about this. Thank you very much. To summarize our discussion, by the way, it seems like we didn't have enough time. We are just picking up speed, literally. But my main question to you is, what do we start with? If we listen to Maria's talk, but by the way, a lot has been said, starting with Alexander Kalmanovsky. So it seems like we all need to start with, getting therapy ourselves. Right? Is that the right conclusion? Does anyone want to argue, or are there any alternative scenarios on how to bring up empathic and human children? I'm not sure that there is one right way to do it. But we need to start with fighting our own impulsivity, our own intolerance. And the alternative to intolerance is tolerance. We need to develop an understanding about other people's faults or mistakes. So we need to learn and accept people as they are. But of course, this acceptance is all about feelings. So we need to use these optics to learn different reactions, or to learn how to react to different things. And here I would recall a metaphor from, plain safety instructions. First, put a mask on yourself and then help your child. That's a great metaphor. I think it really sums up our discussion really well. So we need to put a mask on ourselves first before we help others. Thank you very much, everybody.